Namaste, and welcome to this deep dive. Lately, one thing that's really, got the country talking is the Waqf Amendment Bill.
That's right, the one Parliament passed earlier this year.
Exactly. It's all about reforming how Waqf properties are administered, and it's definitely created a lot of buzz nationwide.
Hanji. And these properties, the original idea was for the welfare of poor Muslims, the less privileged.
But over time, issues cropped up, like mismanagement.
Mismanagement, even corruption in some cases, unfortunately, yeah.
And it seems some of the older laws, they weren't quite hitting the mark. People felt claims are being made on properties sort of arbitrarily, without a proper legal way to challenge it.
That's a big part of the background, yes. Which brings us to today's topic.
Right. For this deep dive, we've got something really quite insightful for you. It's actually the cover story from the April 2025 edition of the e-magazine PreSense.
Ah, PreSense. Yes, they managed to get an exclusive interview, didn't they, with someone right at the center of all this.
They absolutely did. Priyadharshni Rahul, she's the editor, spoke directly with the Honorable Jagadambika Pal,
The chairman of the Joint Parliamentary Committee, the JPC, the very committee that examined this Waqf Amendment Bill 2024.
Exactly that one.
Yeah.
So we're getting this perspective, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
And our aim today is really to understand the key parts of the bill, but specifically through the eyes of the JPC chairman. We'll be focusing quite a bit on the arguments for the act as he explained them.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack this a bit. Because these Waqf properties, they have a long history, right? Set up to help poor Muslims.
That was the intention, yes.
But somewhere along the line, things seem to have taken a bit of a wrong turn.
That's what the proponents of the amendment argue, that issues of misuse and a lack of real accountability crept in.
So these new amendments are designed to tackle that head-on.
Precisely, to address those long-standing problems. So should we dive into what Shri Jagadambika Pal shared in this PreSense interview?
Yes, let's start with the JPC itself. How did it come together? How did it work?
Okay, so he mentioned the bill was presented in the Lok Sabha on August 8th.
Right.
And then pretty quickly, about a fortnight later, the Honorable Speaker appointed him as chairman of this JPC. So he took charge in August. They started work right away.
And it sounds like they really, really dug in. I read something like 38 meetings.
Yeah.
Over 5 months.
That's right. 38 meetings, and he said it totaled over 113 hours. He described it as unprecedented in terms of the time commitment.
113 hours. That's serious examination.
It certainly sounds like it. And the consultations, the sheer scale is quite something.
What do you mean?
Well, Sherelle mentioned they met with 284 different delegations.
284?
Yes. And each one wasn't just a quick chat. They were given 2 to 3 hours each to present their views.
Wow. 2 to 3 hours per delegation.
He really stressed that point, that everyone who wanted to be heard, basically, got that opportunity.
That's a lot of viewpoints to manage. But I also heard about a massive number of emails. Was that true?
Oh, absolutely massive. He said they received over 1 crore emails.
1 crore. So more than 10 million emails.
Kanji. It's just hard to fathom, isn't it? Obviously, they needed a system for that.
I would think so. How do you even begin to sort through 1 crore emails?
Well, the chairman explained they actually requested and got extra support staff, about 30 officers and staff members, just for 3 months, to help manage this flood.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they had a process. They filtered out the very short ones, the simple yes or no type emails, which he said was a significant chunk.
Right.
But here's the key part. He emphasized this. Every single email or letter that had actual substantive suggestions, anything more than just a one-liner,
Yes.
was reviewed in detail, line by line, plus all the written material the delegation submitted to.
Line-by-line review of potentially millions of substantial emails. That sounds incredibly thorough.
It does, especially considering they had a deadline. They had to get the report done within 6 months.
6 months for all that. Given how sensitive this issue is and all those different views, were things tense within the committee sometimes.
He didn't gloss over that. Shri Pal acknowledged, yes, the proceedings were tense at times.
How so?
He mentioned attempts by some opposition MPs to disrupt things. There was even an incident, quite shocking really, where someone threw a bottle.
Threw a bottle. Seriously.
Yes. Thankfully, he said he wasn't hurt. He also mentioned arguments sometimes breaking out right in front of witnesses, which he felt was regrettable.
That sounds difficult to manage.
Definitely. But he stressed his focus was always on keeping things calm, making sure the committee could actually do its work despite the disruptions, not get sidetracked.
It takes a certain temperament, I suppose.
Yeah.
He also mentioned being surprised he was chosen as chairman.
Yes, he did. Said he never really anticipated it, and he expressed his gratitude for the trust the party leadership put in him.
And he described the whole thing as a rigorous examination.
Absolutely rigorous and covering the entire country. It wasn't just Delhi meetings.
Ah, so they traveled. Where did they go?
Lots of places. He listed quite a few states: Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, West Bengal, several others too.
So boots on the ground talking to people across India.
Yes, and these visits weren't always smooth sailing. He noted they often ran into protests.
Protests by whom?
Particularly, he mentioned, from farmers. Farmers whose lands had apparently, sometimes quite suddenly, been declared Waqf property.
Ah, and that connects back to the criticism of the earlier law, doesn't it? The 2013 amendment.
Exactly. Shri Pal specifically flagged the 2013 amendment to Section 40 as a major source of the problem.
What was the issue with Section 40, according to him?
He stated it essentially gave the Waqf board powers that felt unchecked, leading to, widespread unhappiness and a feeling of injustice among people whose property was affected.
Okay, so there's controversy, there are protests. What's his message then, particularly to the Muslim community? Are people worried about these changes?
He addressed this directly in the interview. His main point was that the vast, vast majority of Muslims are peaceful citizens, and they did not participate in these protests.
So the protests weren't widespread within the community itself.
That's his perspective. He even mentioned an allegation that the All India Muslim Personal Law Board tried to sort of stir up opposition, but he thought most people reacted peacefully anyway.
Interesting. Because the media often portrayed it as quite contentious.
He actually went further. He said that in his experience, meeting people across the country, many poor Muslims, people from OBC and Pasmanda communities, even Muslim women intellectuals he spoke with, they actually supported the bill.
Supported it. Why?
Well, his view is that the opposition is coming mainly from a small group of vested interests.
Like who?
He specifically mentioned certain madrasas and some minority organizations. He feels they are trying to mislead the broader community.
So he's suggesting the narrative of widespread opposition might be skewed.
That seems to be his position. He argues the protests were largely put together, orchestrated perhaps, by a handful of Maulanas and specific groups.
Could he give any examples?
Yes, he mentioned a Dharna, a sit-in protest at Jantar Mantar. He claimed that many people attending didn't even really know the details of the bill, and he suggested the protest itself was sponsored.
Sponsored, implying it wasn't organic.
That's the implication, yes. He kept reiterating that the common Muslim, as he put it, isn't involved in these agitations.
Okay, so if that's his take on the opposition, what does he see as the actual benefits of these amendments for the Muslim community?
This is where he gets quite specific about the positive changes. A really major point he highlighted is mandatory representation.
Representation where?
In the Waqf Board itself, and also in the All India Minority Council. Representation for backward groups, he mentioned, OBCs, Pasmandas, poor Muslims specifically, and significantly also 2 women members.
Ah, so building in more diversity and checks and balances.
Exactly, that's the idea. To ensure the governance is more inclusive. And he believes this will lead to the intended outcome.
Which is?
That the income from all these Waqf properties finally reaches the people it was meant for all along. The poorest individuals, orphans, women who need support.
Restoring the original purpose, in a way.
Yes. And he also frames it in terms of the Constitution. He argues these amendments are vital for restoring constitutional balance and transparency.
How so? Constitutional balance.
His argument is that the previous unchecked powers of the Waqf Board were effectively overriding fundamental rights.
Its rights.
He specifically mentioned several articles. Article 14, which is about equality before the law.
Okay.
Article 15, prohibiting discrimination. Article 19, which covers certain freedoms. Article 21, protection of life and personal liberty. And crucially, Article 300A, the right to property.
So the argument is that the old system potentially infringed on these basic constitutional guarantees for everyone, not just Muslims.
That seems to be the implication, yes. That the previous setup under Section 40 created an imbalance that affected fundamental rights. So this amendment isn't about targeting a community, but about aligning the law with core constitutional principles, like equality and property rights.
Right. Ensuring fairness within the constitutional framework.
Precisely. And he did mention, the matter is currently with the courts. But he expressed confidence that the judgment will ultimately be based on merit, on the substance of the case.
Okay. So just to kind of wrap up Shri Pal's perspective from this PreSense interview, his core argument is that the Waqf Amendment Bill, 2024, is fundamentally about bringing in much-needed transparency.
Yes, transparency.
Making the administration accountable.
Accountability.
And ensuring the system is more inclusive, with representation for marginalized groups and women, and ultimately making sure the benefits actually flow to the intended recipients, the poor and needy. All while restoring what he sees as the correct constitutional balance.
That sums up his position quite well, yes. It really gives us a clear insight into the rationale presented by the chairman of the JPC in favor of this significant act.
It certainly does. And this whole discussion, hearing his perspective, it really makes you think, doesn't it, about that complex interplay, respecting historical religious practices on one hand, and the undeniable need for modern reforms, for accountability, for fairness in managing religious endowments in a country as diverse as India.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance.
It leaves you wondering, how do we best navigate that line? Definitely something to ponder, considering all the different viewpoints surrounding this legislation.